not all guests check out. As a teenager, I discovered I was a night owl. I blame the internet partially, but also, there was a weird thrill associated with being awake while the rest of the world slumbers. You feel like an explorer glimpsing something few people have ever seen. Granted, most of the time growing up, the only things I glimpsed during those hours were video games and porn, but you get my point. It's unnatural to be nocturnal as a human. There's a thrill to being out of step with the natural order. To that end, I started working the overnight shift at the front desk of a hotel. While there aren't a ton of people who come breezing in at those hours, you see more traffic than you'd imagine. It mainly was exhausted road-tripping families looking for a place to catch some ZZZS before the next leg of their sojourn, or couples meeting up for a clandestine affair with lust clouding their eyes. It's always easy to spot a cheating couple. Still, there was enough of them to keep you busy. Not overworked, but steady. While I had never intended hotel work to be a career, I did find a lot of joy in the work, and, as a bonus, I was good at it. About a year into the gig, the big boss sat me down and asked me what my plans were post-college. I said I thought I might move to the coasts and look for work that would take advantage of my major. At that time, it was psychology, but everything was up in the air at the moment. The big boss told me that, if I wanted, there would be a night manager position opening up at a property the owner had just purchased in Cincinnati. The starting pay was great, it had tremendous benefits, and if I had a degree in hospitality management, my pay could double in the first year. I had no real love for psychology nor any real job prospects in the field at the time. Plus, the idea of grad school had started to fill me with dread. I decided that I would take the plunge and go for it. I shook the big boss's hand, and my new career path was set. In a year, I'd be the night manager at a newly renovated hotel in a major-ish city. I was thrilled. A year later, I packed up my stuff and moved to Cincinnati. Built in 1922, the Pullman Hotel was a vintage building that had once been the city's crown jewel but had since fallen into disrepair. What once was the town's hotspot with a lively big band and front-page style galas had become a flophouse that catered to transients staying week to week or prostitutes staying hour to hour. The guts of the building looked like an open sore that never totally scabbed over. But the facade on the outside could still catch you by surprise. It had that 20s Art Deco look that made even the drabbest office buildings stand out. Where the Pullman was located, it shined like a diamond in a pile of trash. But urban renewal was becoming all the rage, and gentrification came calling. Soon, all the dilapidated buildings nearby started to change owners, and construction crews shared the streets with unhoused people's tents. My new boss bought the Pullman for a song and took a buffer's rag to that dull diamond. The transformation was impressive. The Pullman looked as glamorous as the day it first opened. My boss took special care to keep the decor as accurate to the era as possible while adding modern touches. It worked. The local press went gaga for the restoration, and soon the Pullman was filling up with travelers from all over the country. The shift in the population of the surrounding area had happened. As always, working-class people were priced out of a place they had lived in for decades as rich, white yuppies moved in. As if to put an exclamation point on the whole gentrification endeavor, a Starbucks opened around the corner. While the Pullman was filled with new staff, there were a lot of holdovers from the previous regime. My boss thought these people knew the hotel at its worst and deserved to see it at its best. I found that touching. That was something they didn't have to do, but it engendered goodwill to the mostly new staff. The first 3 months went smoothly. I loved the night shift, and the crew was great. We all got along and kept the Pullman humming. I genuinely loved my night security crew, A few were holdovers from the other owners, and we just clicked. They had hundreds of stories from their time serving at the Flophouse. Some wild shit happened in the old Pullman. Omar, the head of security, liked to talk about the guests who checked in but never checked out. It was his clever way of saying ghosts. He said the building was filled with them. A lot of people died in the hotel during its flop days. Omar mentioned that, even after 5 years on the job, he still got goosebumps while doing his nightly rounds. He was glad for the security cameras the new owner had installed. It meant he didn't have to brush up against specters so often. I loved the stories Omar told, but I thought they were just that, stories. I don't believe in anything paranormal, especially ghosts. Oftentimes the evidence people mentioned with ghosts were all explainable. Orbs were just dust or bugs. Dark figures were just shadows that hit the right way. Voices picked up by spirit boxes or EVP recordings were just our brains trying to make sense of random electrical noise. Most ghostly faces were just everyday objects and tricks of light. Face pareidolia is hardwired into our brains. We seek out faces that look like us. Ever seen a face in a piece of toast or a tree? It's your brain looking for others like you. Nothing more. But Omar was a true believer. He told me about all the times he saw strange shit in the hotel. There was the time he saw a disembodied hand open the emergency exit door on the second floor. Or the time he heard what sounded like people laughing in the empty downstairs boiler room. My favorite was the time he was climbing down an access ladder in the basement and saw a face staring at him in the room below. Bro, I damn near shit myself when I saw that face. I shot up that ladder faster than a fucking rocket. As I said, Omar had a million stories about the Pullman, and he loved sharing them with us during downtimes. But while each story was different, they always started the same way. It's a cold spot, that's when you know they're there, he'd say, shaking his head. That's when I bug the fuck out before someone shows up and haunts my ass. I told him it was probably just our ancient AC system acting up. While the old Pullman had been a ghost haven, nothing out of the ordinary had happened since the renovations. Like the transients, the spirits had seemingly moved on. We had thrown them out with the old rotted furniture. Omar said he was shocked things were quiet, but he didn't believe they'd stay that way. They'll come back, believe that. I didn't. One of the things I had taken to doing about halfway through my shift was to walk the hotel. For one, it was nice to leave my office and stretch my legs. Secondly, it was good to have non-security employees walk the floors, so people know someone is always around if they need help. Finally, you get to know your hotel when you walk the grounds. All the little alcoves and hiding spots. Places where you can add a vending machine where kids would hide from security, or where you should put a camera. G.I. Joe told us, knowledge is power, and I always trusted the Joes. Last week it seemed like the world was caving in at work. Everyone goes through those times when it feels like all you gotta do is stand up to keep going, but some pissed off God keeps sending hurricane winds to knock you back to earth. That was me last week. We had a power glitch on Monday that screwed up the air conditioner units. Some floors got blasted with AC, and others got none. On Tuesday, someone busted the lock on the side door on the ground floor, which anyone could walk into. Wednesday, our credit card system went down for a few hours and caused havoc with check-ins and check-outs. It was a mess. Ghosts are back, Omar told me on Thursday night. Not ghosts, gremlins. We're being besieged by gremlins, I said with a sigh. Nah, Gizmo was cool. This is ghosts. Ghosts broke the lock on the door? Ghosts busted the AC unit? Could've, Omar said with a shrug. Anything's possible. Not that, I said. Omar shrugged. Until it happens to you, everyone thinks that. Honestly, I'd love to blame ghosts. At least then I'd have a reason why we're having this run of bad luck. Careful what you wish for, bro, Omar said. Changing gears, he gave me a big smile. We're gonna go grab some Taco Bell. You want anything? Aren't you supposed to do your rounds now? I did it earlier. I'm due for my break. You want something or not? Of course I want something, I said with a smile. The usual? Yeah, I said, handing him over some cash. He nodded and pocketed it. New guy Martin is watching the cameras. He's good for a few. I'll take your word for it. Thanks, Chief, Omar said with a fist bump. Be back in a few. He headed out, and I plopped back down in my chair. I knew I shouldn't eat anything late at night, let alone Taco Bell. Still, a spicy potato taco and a chicken quesadilla would be the calming balm I needed to take the edge off this shitty week. I spun in my chair, trying to center myself when I heard a knock at the office door. Damn, was there no line at the bell or what? I said before looking up. It wasn't Omar. It was Gwen. She worked the front desk and was probably my most capable employee. She could run this place in my stead, and there would be no noticeable drop-off. If Gwen was in here, something was amiss. Sorry, Gwen, I said, ceasing my spinning. Omar went to Taco Bell. Oh, I know. I got a bean burrito. A classic, I said for reasons I'm still not sure of. What's up? Someone from the second floor was complaining about noises in the hallway. Okay, I said, did you call security? Yeah, but Martin, well, I think he accidentally shut off the whole system. He's kind of flipping out. Not sure he's the face we want in front of the customers at the moment. I sighed. Of course. Okay. I'll go take a look, I said, standing up. Do you have a walkie I can borrow? Mine's still charging. Sure, she said, let me go grab it. A few minutes later, I left the lobby for the second floor. Now, the second floor is a bit of a misnomer because our second floor is actually at street level. In most modern hotels, the entire street level floor would be just a lobby, bar, and ballroom, but the Pullman isn't like most buildings. Our second floor is comprised of a small lobby and hotel rooms. Our ballrooms and bar are below street level, or the first floor as our elevator calls it. Below that is the basement, where the laundry and other hotel operations are located. Why the wonky labeling system? Well, when the building was first built, they took to calling the basement the first floor and the street level the second. Why? Well, the guy who first made the building had some weird beliefs about numbers and the stars or some such nonsense. I think the bars were built in the basement because of prohibition, but I could never confirm that. I asked the new owner about it once, but it seemed he didn't know either. He told me he wasn't going to change anything because he didn't want to anger the spirits of the previous owners. He was another Omar. If it were up to me, hotel operations would be the sub-basement, the first floor would be the basement, and the second floor would be the main. You know, a common sense approach to everything. But, alas, I'm just the night manager. Those decisions happen way above my pay grade. The Pullman is an architecturally pretty building on the outside, but it's also just a big square. I figured I'd start where the guests had first heard the disturbance and make the walk until I came back to where I started. Along the way, I checked the doors to ensure they were working properly. Hopefully, Omar would come back and fix the cameras, and we would catch whoever was running around. When I opened the door to the floor, I felt the cold piping in. The second was one of those cold floors the broken AC was assaulting. At times, the AC seemed to shift, which floor was cold and which wasn't. The tech we had out on Monday had never seen the kind of behavior we had but assumed it had something to do with the computer system. We were still waiting for a computer specialist to come take a look at the software. In the meantime, I would freeze on the second floor. I started humming along to a Phoebe Bridgers song, Savior Complex, for those keeping score at home, as I strolled to the room that had made the distress call. I hesitated to knock on their door, but I knew they were still up. I rapped on the door and waited a few minutes. I could hear the people inside shuffling and murmuring. I was pretty sure I had just interrupted sex or the prelude to sex. The door cracked open to a shirtless, disheveled man who was none too pleased to see me. "What? Sorry to bother you. I know it's late, but you called about the noise, correct?" "Yeah, Columbo, you solved it." I forced a smile and continued, "I was wondering if you could tell me where the noise was located." "The hallway, like I said to the broad up front." "Yes, but, what was the noise? Running? Voices? Shouting?" "All of it," the man said, back and forth for 10 straight minutes. "What were they saying?" "I dunno," he said, looking agitated. "I had a hard time making out anything. Some bullshit, I'm sure. Sounded like dumbass kids." "Okay," I said. "People don't know how to take care of their fuck prizes these days," he said. I heard the woman he was with admonishing him for the colorful expression of children. He grinned and shook his head. "She hates when I talk like that, ain't that right, doll? I'll leave you two alone. Thanks for your..." The man shut the door in my face. I took that as my cue to go and find the fabled fuck prizes roaming my hotel halls. I was sure if it was kids, they would be back in their rooms by now. It was late in the evening, and even the most unaware parents made sure their kids got to sleep. Regardless, it was my job to walk the chilly hallways of my Hoff hotel and find these rogue tauntauns. I turned the first corner of the big square and heard someone whispering in front of me. I stopped and cocked my ear in the direction of the whispers. They suddenly ceased. I faked walking a few steps and stopped to hear if the voices would start up again, but they didn't. I started walking again, continuing to whistle my way through Phoebe Bridgers' Punisher album, when I heard what sounded like 4 or 5 footsteps running down the next hallway. I ran to the corner in time to see the stairwell door close. Whoever was there was trying to hide on the stairs. Or that's what they wanted me to think. This wasn't my first rodeo, and I knew kids always tried to pull a fast one on adults. Especially adults that were in an authority position. I suddenly shuddered at the thought that I was considered an authority figure. I felt my youth tip over and start to spill out of me at that moment. Just then, from the door at the end of the hall, I saw a figure move. Now, these doors lead to the outside and are made with frosted glass, so I couldn't make out details, but I believed it was probably some of the kids trying to do an end around. The game was on. "Is Omar back?" I asked into the walkie. Static, and then I heard the unsure Martin respond, "He's not. He's, in the bathroom, I think. Martin, I know he went to Taco Bell. You don't have to cover for him." Oh, the voice came back. Then no, he's stuck behind a lady he thinks is ordering everything on the menu. Great, I sighed. Any chance those security cameras are up and working again? After I accidentally turned them all off or whatever, I'd feel better just waiting for him, Martin said. Sorry, boss. I just don't want to make things worse. I get it, I said. Just let me know when Omar gets back, okay? Will do, he said. I looked up at the frosted door at the end of the hall and stared it down. If they had made it outside, they could only get back in through the lobby. These doors locked behind you. I would have called Gwen to tell her, but I was holding her walkie. I was sure she'd noticed a gaggle of kids walking in at this hour. I glanced over at the door to the stairs. I knew I should probably check the stairwell because there was a good chance they had darted down the stairs to hide. I would have if I was a kid and someone was following me. I was just about to swing open that door when I suddenly remembered another spot they might be hiding that was closer. About 10 feet from me was a small alcove where we kept the ice and vending machines. I can't tell you the number of times I've found someone behind the machines trying to vape or get frisky during the night shift. A few times, Omar has found a former guest of the old Pullman trying to break into the vending machines. They wait by the outside doors for smokers and dash in before the door closes. There was a fair to good chance that's where they were. However, if they were clever and their kid radar worked, they'd spot an even better place to hide. Behind the machines is a hatch for a small crawl space. It's an access spot for some AC ducts on the first floor. It was a tight fit to get in, but once you got in and down the ladder, there was a lot of room. Granted, it would be pitch black, but that would help if you were hiding. I decided to skip the stairs and head for the vending machines. I took 3 steps towards it when, from behind, I heard laughing coming from the stairwell. I turned and lunged at the door. I ripped it open, half expecting to see a gaggle of preteen boys, it's always boys, laughing at me. But, instead, I saw nothing. I checked behind the door and even under the landing on the first floor, but I didn't see the hide or hair of anyone. I was stumped. I knew I had heard a laugh. It just didn't make any sense. I walked back into the hallway and let the heavy stairwell door slam behind me. "Suck a crow's cock," I said out loud. That was the trigger. I suddenly heard someone trying to stifle a laugh. Then 2 people. Then a group of boys started laughing uncontrollably. It was from behind the vending machines, just like I thought. I walked over there and found 4 boys red-faced with laughter. "Hey guys," I said. They started laughing harder. I couldn't help but smile, it was contagious. Even though I was technically the authority figure here, I was still human. Was it what I said? I asked. Yes, they all responded. That's why I said it, I lied. I knew you wouldn't be able to not laugh. Come on, let's get out of there. I moved out of the way and let them slide out from behind the machines. As they were passing, I nodded down at the crawl space hatch. I'm glad you guys didn't go down there. I didn't want to climb down a ladder in the dark. We were going to, the biggest kid said, but we heard someone down there. We thought it was security. There isn't anyone down there, I said. We all heard someone walking and talking down there, the smallest kid said. It was probably just the AC making noise. It's not working correctly. That's why it's so cold on this floor, I said. It didn't sound like an AC, a blonde boy said. It was, I countered. Where did the kids on the stairs and running around outside go? They all looked at each other, confused. The big kid was about to respond, but then we all heard footsteps coming down the hall. The kids looked up at me in fear, and for a half second, I was scared too. David, are you and your brothers down there? The big kid recognized the angry voice. They all did. The jig was up. Mom had arrived on the scene. I stepped out from the vending machines, and the 4 kids followed behind me. The mom and I locked eyes. They were playing hide and go seek, I said. She ignored me and zeroed in on the small group of boys. What in the world were you 4 thinking? Sneaking out of the room and running around the hotel? They weren't too loud, I said, trying to soften the blow. Thank you for finding them, Mom said to me. I'm sorry if they caused any problems. I can't believe they snuck out. It's not a problem, I said, turning on the manager charm. We all did stupid things as kids. She feigned a laugh and pointed back towards her room. Let's get going, boys. Now. They all hung their heads and started back towards the room. Mom and I locked eyes again, and she sighed. Thanks again for being so understanding. Sorry if they ruined your shift. Nah, they gave me something to do. Enjoy the rest of your night. Thanks, you too, she said as she turned and joined her 4 dejected-looking boys. She stared down at them and shook her head. What am I gonna do with you 4, huh? Sorry, they all said in unison. I figured this wasn't the first time they had done something like this. Mom, the littlest boy said, do you want to hear what that hotel guy said about crows? I turned to leave to avoid any side-eye from Mom for my previous outburst when I heard something bump the wall behind the vending machines. Confused, I thought there might be another ruse group of boys sneaking around. The other boys had said they heard someone down there. I sighed and headed toward the crawl space. I squatted down and put my ear to the cover. I couldn't be sure, but I thought I heard something moving down there. It was hard to make anything out for sure with the cover on. I knew I would have to remove the hatch to get a better look. I pulled out my multi-tool and unfastened the screws. When all 4 were out, I gingerly grabbed the hatch cover and pulled it away. As soon as I did, you could feel a blast of cold air coming up from the room below. There had to be a leak in these ducts. I made a mental note to tell the repair guy when they returned. I cocked my ear towards the darkness and listened. I didn't hear anything now. No shuffling, no talking, nothing. I pulled out my cell and turned on my flashlight. I pointed it down the shaft and onto the floor below. My camera's light struggled to illuminate much of the area. I leaned my head into the hole to get a better look. That's when I heard someone start loudly knocking behind me. I tried to rise up, but forgot I was leaning into the hole and slammed my head on the hatch opening. I nearly dropped my phone down the shaft to the room, but by the grace of God, I held on. I pulled myself out of the crawl space and from behind the vending machines. Rubbing the back of my head, I glanced down the hallway and saw a figure standing just outside the frosted glass door. I knew I had seen someone outside earlier, and now they were knocking to be let in. My guess was this was another group of kids who realized they had been locked out of the hotel. I started down the hall and pulled my walkie up to ask about the security cameras again when the figure standing outside waved at me. That was when I realized the figure was an adult, and they were trying to get my attention. I waved back and hastened my pace. Someone probably went outside for a smoke and forgot their key. As I said, it happens all the time. I got to the door and cracked it open. There was an older woman, I pegged her in her mid-50s, standing outside with an embarrassed look on her face. She was wearing vintage clothes that were out of style but looked right on her. She had blonde hair with gray streaks and the most piercing green eyes I'd ever seen. Her face was cherubic and pleasant, but you could see the red of embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "Hey there," I said, opening the door wide to let her in. "I got turned around," she said, walking in. "Thank you for helping me." "No problem. Did you forget your key? Yes, she said. If I had a dime for every time someone stepped outside for a smoke and forgot their key, I could retire. I'd love to retire, she said with a faint smile. What do you do, if you don't mind me asking? From behind me, the door to the stairwell slammed shut. I spun around, hoping to catch who was playing on the stairs, but I didn't see anyone. There might still be another group of kids out here. Is this the Pullman? The woman asked. Yes, I said, confused. Looks so different. We just went through major renovations, I offered. Have you stayed here before? Oh yes, many years ago. We tried to keep some of the charm of the old place, but updated it. How did we do? She didn't respond at first. I thought maybe she hadn't heard me, but when I looked at her, she looked lost. Like, I could see her eyes, but they were dulled. I wondered if she had a mental illness and maybe was off her meds. I knew the state-run hospitals made a habit of dropping off discharged patients in this area. Are you feeling okay? I asked, softening my voice. That question didn't seem to penetrate her shields either. I was about to call for help when she finally stopped drifting and righted her course. I've seen so many things, she finally said, not breaking her gaze with mine. So many horrible things. Drugs. She was probably on drugs as well. It made the most sense. She said she was familiar with the Pullman, but hadn't been here in a while. Maybe she used to score at the old place and had been away for a time. I had to be careful because you never know how an addict might respond, especially if they were mentally ill and off medication. Hopefully not here, I said in as light a tone as I could muster. There are so many dark things here, she said, looking lost again. I feel drawn to them. It's why I stay here. Is there someone I can call to help you? She started laughing. It came on small, like a joke that took a minute to land, but then grew into a full-on fit. She doubled over, held her stomach, and laughed. I took a step back and started scanning the hallways for some help or a way out of there. Then she stopped as if someone had flipped a switch. She looked at me and shot me a warm smile. Is Wallace still here at this time of night? I don't know of any Wallace that works here, I said. Did he used to work at the hotel when you used to come? He owned the place. I had known the names of the previous two owners, and neither was named Wallace. I wasn't sure if anyone who had ever owned this place was named Wallace. I was sure I was dealing with a mentally unwell person at that point. I wanted to ensure they got the help they needed. I also needed to get them out of my hotel before something bad happened. Bad PR could kill a new place as quickly as a bullet. Maybe we can see if we can find him in our directory up front, I said. Can you follow me to the lobby? So many people died here, she said. Wallace hurt so many people. I didn't know what to say. While my brain searched for a response, I heard the squawk of my walkie coming to life. A familiar voice came across the walkie. It was Omar. Hey boss, what's going on? I pulled up my walkie and smiled at the woman. Give me a second, I told her before I took a few steps away, turned my back to her, and pressed the button to respond. About time you got back, Omar. Blame Taco Bell. Who are you talking to? Someone that may or may not be a guest in the hotel. I might need you down here to help. Boss, what are you talking about? What don't you understand? You see us, right? You fixed the security cameras? Yeah, but... So what are you confused about? I need help with this lady. She may be lost or, I whispered, mentally ill or on drugs or something. She seems out of it. I'm afraid she might get. Omar cut me off. Boss, there isn't anyone there with you. The air went out of the room. I felt my skin go prickly all over. My head felt fuzzy like I had just done whippets. My mouth had dried in an instant, and my tongue felt foreign in my mouth. What are you? I was calling to ask if you were okay because you're talking to yourself. Omar, I was talking to. I turned back and saw an empty hallway. I glanced in both directions, but didn't see a trace of the person that had been standing there. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. Boss? You okay? Omar's voice sounded a million miles away. I thought I might black out. None of this made sense. My legs started to wobble, but I caught myself. I looked around again, but it was futile. I was alone in the hallway. There are so many dark things here, I heard a disembodied voice say. It sounded like it was coming from all around me. Then, right next to my ear, the woman whispered, so many people were hurt. Then I heard footsteps run down the hall away from me. Not just a pair, but what sounded like dozens. They pounded on the ground, sounding like a herd of elephants on the march. Then I heard the laughter again. I stood, frozen in place, unable to process anything. I heard a room door whip open and saw the pissed-off man I spoke to earlier come bursting into the hallway. He was completely naked, and it was apparent his good time had been interrupted, but now he had a look of murder in his eyes. He saw me at the other end of the hallway and yelled, "Catch these fucking kids and keep quiet. I'm trying to bawl my old lady in." Just then, he was violently pushed back into his room by some unseen force. Something cackled as the naked man tumbled to the ground. His door slammed shut by itself, and I was sure he wouldn't come back out, or at all, if I'm being honest. The vending machine suddenly tipped over and slammed into the ground with a glass-shattering crunch. I saw the cover to the crawl space opening fly out and slam into the opposite wall. "Oh shit," I heard Omar say, but I didn't hear anything else. I dropped the walkie and took off in a full sprint in the opposite direction. I didn't stop running until I hit the security office. Omar was smiling as I walked in. "I told you," he said, pointing at the screen. "This place is haunted as fuck." I watched the footage and saw what Omar had told me about. I was standing alone in the hallway, talking to no one. I felt sick to my stomach. I decided to take the rest of the shift off. I went home and stayed up for the rest of the night, afraid to sleep. When I felt better, I started looking into the hotel's past. Turns out, the original owner of the Pullman was an eccentric named Wallace Hosea. He made his money in the whiskey trade and liked to imbibe himself. The problem was he turned to mean when he drank. When Prohibition hit, he poured his money into the hotel, but never let his liquor connections go. Rumors were that he was mobbed up, and the Pullman was used as a final destination for many men and women who ran afoul with gangsters or Wallace himself. One of his alleged victims was his mistress. I saw a photo of her. It was the woman I spoke to that night. When I take my walks around the Pullman now, I do it when Omar does his rounds. Not that two people would be able to do anything if a ghost appeared and got violent, but we Americans love the illusion of safety. Even though my rational brain has a hard time accepting there are ghosts in this world, I know what I went through. I saw, spoke, and interacted with a person who simply wasn't there. I think I need a raise. The Hotel Bella Muerte, the giant cannibal demon. The next morning I woke up with my face throbbing with every heartbeat. I must have been given something to make the pain bearable the day before. I rose from the bed begrudgingly and headed to the bathroom. As I stumbled in, I tried not to look at my face, but was unsuccessful. It was the first thing I saw in the mirror this time. I took a closer look at it, but unlike before, the cuts didn't seem quite so deep. I imagined once they healed, only the two middle ones would scar. Still, that was one too many for me. I never considered myself a vain person, but I found myself upset at the thought of my beauty being marred, and I felt guilty for feeling that way. The lost eyesight was only cursory. I took a washcloth and began to slowly and carefully clean the wounds. It stung like fire and made the throbbing heartbeat stronger. I tried my best to clean up without causing it to bleed again. Thankfully, I was able to finish quickly enough without causing myself any undue pain. I finished with my morning routine, minus the makeup, and continued to get dressed. I put on a regular old, baggy t-shirt and a pair of leggings, nothing fantastical or flashy, but certainly comfortable. Then I headed downstairs. On the lobby's front desk sat a note and two pill bottles, one blue and the other red. The note read, "I am so sorry we couldn't save your eye, but I'm glad to know you are feeling hopefully some better. Have left you a blue bottle of pain medication to be taken every 8 hours and a daily antibiotic in the red bottle. Hopefully, this will prevent infection and help with the pain. Hope to see you soon. Your friend the Candyman." I quickly grabbed the half-empty glass of water that sat on the front desk and took one of the pills from the blue bottle and one from the red. I swallowed them down with the water and hoped they would kick in soon. I had decided that even though I wanted to rebuild the town, but that would have to take a back seat for now until Lily came back. Until then, I planned on finding everything I could about the demon creatures that walked the earth at night. I decided the first person I'd talk to was Jasper. If nothing else, he could help point me in the right direction to find out more about the creatures of the night. I got to the post office in time to see Jasper with his back turned to me, presumably locking the post office door. I supposed he didn't want a repeat of what happened a few days prior. As he finished, he turned around to see me standing at the foot of the stairs. I had startled him a little. He jumped and clutched his hand to his chest. "Why so jumpy?" I asked. "Well, if you weren't as quiet as a mouse, I would have heard you coming," he responded, beginning to come down the stairs. "You always know when I'm coming. You have like a sixth sense or something," I said, eyeing him, looking for any further signs of bewilderment. "Well, I guess things have gotten me a little on edge and not quite myself," he said, looking down to the ground, his mind elsewhere. "I can ask you a favor. Well, not a favor, more for information than anything. I'm gonna kill that thing that did this to my face," I told him as I pointed to it. "I just need to figure out how." That's not possible. At least I don't think it is. Plus, it's way too dangerous," he answered. "My mind is made up, Jasper. You're not going to change it. I just need you to tell me all you know about them or where I can find out." I started getting defensive. He wasn't going to tell me what to do. He sighed deeply and said to me, "I guess I can't, can I?" "Well, if I can't change your mind, then the least I can do is tell you all I do know so you don't run off half-cocked and get yourself killed. Come on in and let me get some coffee started for us." Once inside, I walked over and sat down at the table where the tin still sat in the middle. My stomach churned with the thought of what I had seen and felt from eating that slice of pie. I waited for Jasper as he prepared the coffee for us. It only took a few moments, and once it was done, he poured 2 cups. Walking over, he sat one of the cups before me. It was one of those old tin cups, the kind that kept the coffee warm for a bit. We sat there in silence for a while, just staring at our cups, both of us lost in thought. After it had cooled some, I took the first sip. Before I could even speak to ask my first question, Jasper blurted out, "I'm so sorry again, Autumn, for what happened. I made such a simple and stupid mistake, and I almost got you killed." And I stopped him right there. "Jasper, it's okay. I know it was an accident. I don't blame you, and I certainly am not angry with you, so stop apologizing. I know you want to help, and you have, but now I need to get rid of that thing and keep it from hurting anyone else. I'm just hoping there is a way to." He sat there for a minute, letting my words sink in. "I just want to make sure you're okay first. I know it has to be hard, not just looking at yourself, but coming that close to death is enough to cause the bravest person to crumble, and you're so small, and I thought, fragile. I guess I was wrong about you after all." He ended with a slight chuckle. I have to admit I had to laugh a little too. I had been so mad at him the first time we met, when he unrightfully judged me without knowing me. I had to also admit that this was a new side of me that I hadn't even seen. I was hoping, however, that it would dissipate once I could get rid of those spirits that walked around at night. Meanwhile, I was going to do my best to find out all I could about them. "So what do you know about those creatures?" Lily called them evil spirits that walk the earth due to all the atrocities that happened here. "Is that true?" I began. "As far as I know, that's what they are. There is no reason to believe otherwise. Where they came from is anyone's guess. All I know is they showed up after the natives cursed the land. They would only ever come at night, in the dark, never in the light. They hate the light. I don't know if it does anything to them, but they just stay clear of it." He answered after taking a pretty hefty swig of coffee from his mug. "Is there anything that stops them or makes them go away? Do they even have names? I know you said names were powerful to them, or was that only about people?" I further inquired, hoping to learn of their weaknesses. "To my knowledge, there is nothing that can kill them, if that is what you're asking. But you can fend them off with light and burning sage. They hate the smell of it. It drives them away, and they can only ever enter a room when it's unlocked where you allow them in." He took another gulp of coffee. "As far as what they are called, that I don't know. We only ever called them, them. I don't know if they even have names, but the best person to probably ask would be your friend Deb." I took a sip from my mug and thought for a minute. I think I may do that. Especially since Lily and you both said they only ever appeared after the curse. It may very well have something to do with that. We both sat there a few moments longer, finishing our coffee. Once we had finished, I got up to leave, and he stood with me. "Autumn, I just want you to know, if you ever need anything, I'll be here. Just don't do anything stupid or too crazy, all right?" "I won't. You will probably be the first person I tell if I decide to make a move on these things. I may need all the help you can give before it's over," I said seriously, while trying to sound lighthearted towards the end. I left then to head back to the hotel. I figured a call to Deb was in order. I knew she probably knew more about these things than Lily, Jasper, and I combined. Once back at the hotel, I walked over to the phone, picked it up, and dialed her number. It rang several times before it finally rolled over to voicemail. I left a brief message asking her to call me back on my cell. Then I put the phone back in its place before deciding to head over to the library to see if there was anything about them there. I got to the library pretty quickly, looking over my shoulder the whole way. I swore I had seen something lurking in the shadows in one of the alleyways, but I was sure those things wouldn't be seen in the light since they waited till dark to come out. My mind was just playing tricks on me, causing extreme paranoia, that's all. At least I was hoping that was what it was. I entered the building and walked directly over to the librarian. The librarian looked up from her newest stack of papers and records and gasped when she saw my face as her hand flew to her mouth. She quickly pulled it away to not offend me, and she averted her eyes so as not to stare. I appreciated the gesture, but understood this was probably going to be most people's reaction to seeing my face. It was quite horrific. I couldn't blame her. Once she had calmed down a little, she asked me, how can I help you today? Can you tell me where I can maybe find information on the creatures that walk through the town at night? I answered her. Well, that would be in the nonfiction section, probably upstairs with the town records. Then she added, plus you may want to take a look at the old caretaker's binders and the cases. They wrote about them all the time. She handed me the key from the drawer, and I took it from her hand. I started to walk away as she stood and said, I'm so sorry about the pie. I turned to look back at her and smiled so as not to offend her. Don't be. It was the best pie I've ever had, minus the paralysis. She smiled sheepishly as a warm blush began to creep up on her face and sat back down. I headed back up the now familiar steps to the records section. It seemed as if I was spending a lot of my time here as of late. I poked around at various town newspapers and found very little regarding the creatures there, at least nothing I didn't already know, and so I started looking in the main town records. With no luck there either, I began to open the cabinets and one by one look through the worn pages of each binder, scanning them as I went for any mention of the evil spirits. I hit the jackpot in the third binder, belonging to Annabelle Lee, about the middle of the way through. In its pages, it documented a conversation between Annabelle and what I assumed had been one of the tribe's members, possibly even one of Deb's ancestors. Here is the section of the written log. October 31st, 1870 saw another one of those creatures today. That makes 12 this week. They come at night and tap on the windows, calling out in the dark to be let in or muttering or talking in the voices of people we know. They even are becoming bolder, coming out at dusk and hiding in the alleyways. Jasper says to lay low for a few days. He installed locks on all the hotel room doors for added protection in case I forget to lock the front doors. I can hear them now as I write. They are coming closer to town with each minute that passes. I can't stand the way they look. It took one guy last week when he went to take the trash out after dark, and it got one of the travelers that came to town the other day. I saw the whole thing. The man came to town the other day, and he didn't listen when I told him to stay in at night. He said something about stargazing, and I assumed he went outside to do this. That's when I heard him scream. I ran from the desk to the window. He was there by the alleyway, and one of the creatures had him by the throat. It demanded his name, and he gave it. Then before my eyes, I saw the creature change into a hideous being out of the shadow it had cloaked itself in. It was a giant man, with gnarled and withered old hands that bent and twisted, turning into great horned hands. Prickles began to emerge from its chest just as hair would, sharp as porcupine quills, and his arms began to grow and bulge, far more muscular than any living human I'd ever seen. Black and white scales began to grow from his arms as well, shimmering and glinting in the moonlight. Its mouth grew ever wider, till its smile ran from one ear to the other, nearly cutting its head in half. Its face began to swell, causing it to become reddened and puffy. His eye is large and unblinking. Tusks began to sprout from him as well, becoming long and yellowed as an elephant would with age, and it pulled out the largest flint knife I'd ever seen, positioning it towards the man, but deciding instead to devour him. He grabbed hold of the man and yanked him up in the air. First, he bit into the man's legs up to his waist, chewing and smacking on the man. I could hear the bones crunch and break between the creature's teeth as he ground them before swallowing. The next thing I knew, the creature took another bite and another, the man screaming the whole time until he was completely gone. As I stood there watching, the creature turned towards the window, looked me dead in the eye, and rushed the window. I screamed and ran for my room, locking it securely behind me. When I went to the balcony doors, I looked out, but the creature was gone, and the only evidence we had of it ever being there in the first place was a pool of blood that had stained the earth a crimson color. I added 2 new rules to the list. Never forget to lock the doors at night. You don't want to let them in, and only take the trash out during daylight hours. Hopefully, this will prevent any more deaths at the hands of those things. I was appalled by the account in Annabelle's red binder. The man didn't even stand a chance against those things. I hoped that I would be better equipped when the time came to face these creatures, and it sounded like there were quite a few of them. I closed the binder and kept looking, but couldn't find a more detailed account than the one from Annabelle's binder. As I was wrapping up and placing everything back where it belonged, my cell began to ring. I pulled it from my pocket and answered it. "Hello?" I began. "Hey, it's Deb. How are things?" she said, sounding chipper. I didn't want to blow the wind from her sails, but I also needed to let her know what happened. I had an accident. Long story short, I got attacked by one of the creatures that walks at night or in the dark places where the light can't touch it. "Oh my God, are you okay?" she half yelled. "What happened, and are you okay?" I told her the story, leaving nothing out. Then I told her of what I found in the red binder. She was perplexed by what exactly the creature was. She agreed it was an evil spirit of some sort, but wasn't sure exactly what it could be. She told me she'd call back after she spoke with her elders and found out what it was, as well as any information that would help me get rid of them. In the meanwhile, it was late afternoon and the summer was coming to a close, the sun fading in the sky earlier than normal, setting it afire, so I decided to head back to the hotel before it fully set. I got home as quickly as could, wasting no time watching the birds as they flew into the horizon. As soon as I was inside, I locked the doors behind me. Nothing was going to get in behind me now or ever again if I could help it. I sat behind the desk, beginning to journal in my red binder. I figured if things like this were going to happen in the town, I might as well write about them and catalog their happenings. I wrote about all that had passed in the days since my employment, leaving no detail out. Once I got up to date, I promised myself to keep it that way. Around the time I finished, the sun had long set and the creatures were on the prowl. My phone began to ring once more and I picked it up and answered it. "Hey, it's Deb again." The voice rang out. "Hey Deb, so what were you able to learn?" I asked, closing the binder and getting up to put it away. "You aren't going to like it, but I have to tell you, especially if you plan on going after one," she said, pausing. "Go on," I told her, sitting back down in my seat. She sighed deeply before she began. "The creatures are the descendants of the giant cannibal demon, Adicea." "Who is that?" I said, my interest level growing. "Adicea is in our old stories. He is exactly as you described. The only problem was he was defeated by the twin war gods, but nothing is ever said about how a human could kill them. After talking with my elders, they all agreed that to name the creature is to hold power over him. Nothing more is said about how to kill them, though. Their best advice is to burn sage and other herbs we'll send to you, so look out for a package, but they recommend not doing anything about it till we can formulate a plan and maybe get some people down there. We were the ones that caused the evil spirits to walk amongst the land. Let us help to get rid of them," she told me. All right, I'll wait, but burn sage like you said. I think Jasper has some. Then we'll come up with a plan once you get here, I said, shifting in my seat. It's a plan then. We'll head up tomorrow. See you soon in autumn, just be careful, okay? She said. I will. See you soon, I told her as I hung up the phone, ending the conversation. Moore's Omnibus Hotel. You'd be surprised by the number of people who don't research a hotel before booking. Especially one, where if they even so much as typed the name into the search bar would see that Moore's Omnibus quite literally means death to all in Latin. My name is Carice, which yes, does mean death spirits in Greek mythology. But Greek mythology doesn't matter in the real world. Do you know what does apply to real life? Demons, entities, and spirits. I find myself all too acquainted with these sorts of above beings, or below depending on how you see it. Moore's Omnibus Hotel has been in my family for generations, and over these hundreds of years we collected quite a few supernatural guests. Because of this, we have certain precautions posted around the lobby, hallways, and stairwells. Pretty much wherever you go there's bound to be an infamous neon green sign. Neon green for a reason, people, which may have something along the lines of if stalls are all locked and the mirror cracked, close your eyes and slowly back out of the restroom. Have a lovely day. Most people follow the enforced suggestions out of fear. Others don't follow them for the same reason, fear. When we hire staff here, they're forced to take a rather excruciating mental evaluation and a couple of faked, but could quite literally happen any day for real, scenarios, which may be why we have to pay rather high here. Simply being a janitor could earn you enough to live comfortably in New York and splurge here and there. Carice, we have an issue. Room 73 stomping again, my walkie-talkie whispers, and I recognize the voice of our newest hire, Candace, on the line. I'm on the way, Candy, just alert the nearby rooms, too well. Stay in their rooms for the next 2-3 hours. The line is quiet for a moment, and I begin to panic thinking she's already headed in without backup. Yes, ma'am, knocking on doors now. I stand from my comfortable red office chair and begin my descent up the side staircases. One thing hidden from guests is the new staircases built into the side of the hotel. Each has a passage which, if pressing your back against a tight-fitted wall, can get you into any hotel room through a certain well-disguised painting. New hires don't know about this either, due to a couple of perverted concierges who took room service too far. Twisting my pink fanny pack to the front of my waist, I grip a lighter. Sliding through the paneling, I shimmy down the long hallway toward room 73. The banging gets louder and louder, till my skull is being banged against the cement bricking. I flip the latch, push the painting, and close my eyes. Looking at it could cause immediate death, and my presence unannounced probably displeases it enough. I flip the switch kept beside the painting, releasing a spray of gasoline from the ceiling. I count to 10. Once I feel the carpets good and soaked, I throw the lighter. When the flickering flames begin to feel warm and hot against my face, the banging stops. I swing the painting close and shimmy back down the hidden hallway. Once in the stairwell, I pant. Room 73 doesn't like fire, which is why the neon green sign posted on the wall reads that if loud noise is heard from inside, call the front desk. But if the room door is open, the best thing to do to save your soul is close your eyes and run. I don't know what's in room 73, but I know that it's hungry, and pig's flesh and fire will only hold it off for so long. Human meat will be needed to satisfy its hunger for the next couple of months. When the room bangs, the door will eventually open and curious guests will peek inside and find doom. Even good Samaritans just trying to close a fellow guest's door will die. I put my walkie-talkie to my mouth. Jeffrey, we're gonna need a bad egg. Silence. Carice, are you sure? I roll my eyes. I've been in charge ever since I was 19 and my father walked to his doom. Would you rather it be a good one, Jeff? More silence. 86. I begin jogging up the stairs to reach the next floor. Someone please inform Boogie I'm on floor 8. I need to speak with him. You called? A ghostly voice whispers, and behind me emerges a young man in dark jeans and a navy sweatshirt pulled over his face. I don't know how long he's wandered these halls, but what I do know is he can tell me more about the occupants of room 86 than Jeffrey can. Sir, room 86, are they? He chuckles, cutting me off. Oh yes, very much indeed. Molested his daughter in that very room only moments ago. He clutches the handle of the scythe in his pocket. Yes, he carries a scythe, and yes, it seems to emerge from the small pockets of his hoodie as it fits perfectly, but I know better than to question the magic of an entity. And it's a man? I grit my teeth. My staff is trained to keep an eye out for scum like this. Though I cannot see his eyes, I can feel them narrow at me, and I realize this is all the information I'm privy to. I turn away from him and through the doors down the hall. He's lost his cell phone, Boogie whispers as I carefully scanter away from him. Smoothing my shirt and putting the final pieces of my plan together, I put on my happy-to-help grin and knock. I'm coming. A polite British voice responds. The door opens and a man maybe mid-30s with a loose-fitting t-shirt and tight jeans appears. Hi sir, we were informed that in room 73, only the floor below found your cell phone. They'd like to hand it directly to you. His face lights up and he quickly spins around to yell into the bedroom. Clarice. I'll be right back. Don't leave. I step aside as he rushes down the hall toward the elevator. I gently enter the room and push through the bedroom door. Clarice? Hi, sweetie. Come with me, we'll call the police. She appears to be maybe 10 years old and is huddled in the corner of the room. Ripped clothes and sheets cover the floor. A few more soothing words and she huddled close to my side as we made our way towards the front desk to call for help. My walkie-talkie grumbles to me. Hey Carice, rooms have been fed, the juices are leaking though. And oh yeah, Thomas said the bathroom's soaked in blood again. The Enigma Hotel. Eli Steele and his partner Clifton Underwood entered room number 223. It had 2 beds and an open patio that could be accessed through a sliding glass door. Eli flicked the lid of the Zippo lighter, looking around the room as Clifton followed behind him carrying their bags. Underwood set their bags down on one of the beds, closed the door, and rubbed a hand over his face where there was a scar under his right eye. Let's get set up, said Eli, looking over at his partner. Clifton nodded and opened one of the bags, taking out a couple of pieces of equipment suited for catching anything paranormal. An audio recorder and inductive probe. Eli gazed out the sliding glass door. Do you think we'll find anything? Clifton said. With their equipment set up, both began communication. They took turns asking questions, and so far, it had been fruitless. Eli sighed, leaning back in his chair, taking the Zippo out of his pocket, flipping its lid open, then closing. His tired eyes took in the room's layout as Underwood used an inductive probe. "Get out," the inductive probe whispered. Clifton locked eyes with Eli. Grabbing an audio recorder, Steele pressed one of the buttons. "Why do you want us to get out?" There was a bit of silence before the light fixtures on the wall began to shake and flicker, causing the room to go light then dark. There in the darkness stood a woman not dressed for the current time. Her form twitched and shifted as if trying to stay visible to both men. "Eli," Clifton whispered, glancing at his partner, who held the audio recorder tightly in his hand before he was thrown through the sliding glass doors and sliding into the wooden fence outside. As his attention was on Eli, he did not see the apparition of the woman now standing just a few feet in front of him. She raised her hand, making his back hit the wall, gripping him by the neck as he slowly slid up to the ceiling. Clifton kicked his feet and coughed as he grasped at the pressure around his neck, trying to breathe. Eli stood up as he spat blood onto the concrete floor of the patio and slowly got to his knees. "Hey!" Eli yelled at the woman, who jerked her head in his direction, momentarily causing her to lose her hold on Underwood, who fell to a slump on the floor. "You want us out so badly, then come and get me." Eli snarled at her, watching her face twist into anger as she ran towards him, screaming. Holding the Zippo in his right hand and a silver cross soaked in holy water in the other, he waited for the perfect opportunity to jab the cross into her chest as she pounced on him. He lit the cross with the Zippo, setting her ablaze, and rolled off to the side away from her. The woman screamed and thrashed before she became nothing more than a dark, ashy mist. Steele stumbled inside and went to Clifton's side, checking his pulse. When he felt nothing, he put an ear to his chest, hearing a heartbeat. Clifton took a deep breath before sitting up and looking around the room in a panic. S.G. Clifton looked around wildly, bracing himself for yet another attack. "She is gone now." Eli stood looking at the mess they had caused. Sking, the hotel isn't going to be happy about this mess, as he dusted the broken glass from his button-up shirt. Clifton calmed down a bit, taking in his surroundings, no longer sensing the woman. Yes, it would seem so. He shakingly held up his hand to Eli, who took it, helping his partner to his feet. Clifton leaned against the wall, taking a moment to relax as Eli sat in a chair next to him. "Well, at least we can conclude that this place and their rooms are indeed haunted," chuckled Eli. Clifton groaned tiredly. "Please tell me that this the only room that needs cleansing." Eli would not tell Clifton that they have another job at a haunted hospital after this one. No, for now he would let his old friend rest and break the news to him as they drove to their next destination. Since the case of the Enigma Hotel was now at a close, The Haunting of Hotel Delamar. Once upon a time, in a small town shrouded in darkness, there lived a young boy named Ethan. Tragedy had struck his life when a devastating fire engulfed his family's home, leaving him as the sole survivor. Haunted by the memories of that fateful night, Ethan was determined to find his family, or at least some answers, in the eerie Hotel Delamar. Rumors whispered through the town about the hotel's sinister past, but Ethan's desperation overshadowed any fear he felt. Armed with a flickering flashlight and a heavy heart, he stepped into the hotel's dimly lit lobby. The air was thick with an unsettling silence, as if the walls themselves held secrets. As Ethan ascended to the first floor, he noticed peculiar paintings lining the hallway. Each portrait depicted a family, their eyes hollow and their smiles twisted into sinister grins. Unease crept up his spine, but he pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. On the second floor, the atmosphere grew colder, and the flickering lights cast eerie shadows on the peeling wallpaper. Ethan's heart raced as he stumbled upon a dusty room filled with old photographs. To his horror, he recognized his face in each picture, but the people surrounding him were strangers. Confusion and fear consumed him, but he couldn't turn back now. With trembling hands, Ethan reached the third floor, where the air grew heavy with a suffocating darkness. The sound of distant whispers echoed through the corridor, sending chills down his spine. As he cautiously opened a creaking door, he found himself in a room filled with mirrors. But these mirrors were different. They reflected not his physical appearance, but his deepest fears and insecurities. The fourth floor beckoned Ethan with a foreboding presence. The walls seemed to close in on him, and the floorboards groaned beneath his weight. In a room at the end of the hallway, he discovered a dusty journal. Its pages were filled with his handwriting, detailing his darkest thoughts and secrets. Panic consumed him as he realized that someone had been watching him, documenting his every move. Summoning every ounce of courage, Ethan ascended to the fifth and final floor. The air grew thick with malevolence, and the flickering lights cast eerie shadows that danced along the walls. In a room at the end of the hallway, he found a locked door. Desperation fueled his determination, and he searched for a key. Finally, in a forgotten corner, Ethan discovered a rusty key hidden beneath a decaying carpet. With trembling hands, he unlocked the door, revealing a room filled with photographs of his family. Tears streamed down his face as he realized the truth: his family had perished in the fire that claimed their home. But the horror didn't end there. As Ethan turned to leave, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in a cracked mirror. His eyes were hollow, his smile twisted into a sinister grin. The hotel had consumed him, revealing the darkness that lay dormant within his soul. In that moment, Ethan understood that the hotel was not just a place of nightmares, but a manifestation of his inner demons. He had lost not only his family, but also himself in his relentless pursuit of answers. Trapped within the hotel's walls, he would forever wander, a ghostly reminder of the horrors that lurked within. Hotel Nightmare. Needless to say, I don't like staying at hotels much anymore. I drove 9 hours to meet my parents at a halfway mark to pick up my 2-year-old daughter at an agreed-upon hotel. I assumed we were all going to stay there the night since we both had such a long drive. When I had grabbed all her things, I asked, "Are you going to stay here too?" My dad said, "No, we are gonna head back." I was a little disappointed, but I understood that they don't like hotels much. I checked in and went to our room. It was fairly late, but I don't sleep much at night. I am more of a night person. I turned the TV on and I was in my bed and my daughter was in hers. She fell asleep pretty quickly, probably after the car ride. I had all the lights off in the room. The only light was coming from the TV. I was sitting up against the headboard with my legs stretched out straight in front of me under the covers. All of a sudden, I felt something grab my toes. Both feet at the same time. I quickly pulled my legs in toward me with my knees bent against my chest. I grabbed my phone and used the light on it to shine at the end of the bed. I didn't see anything. I sat there trying to look stoic, like I wasn't afraid, but inside I was screaming. I didn't want whatever it was to see me scared. After a few minutes of sitting there, acting like nothing just happened, I relaxed my legs and continued watching TV. Seemed like moments later, I felt pressure next to my leg, like a hand, like someone was leaning their body onto the bed from the end of the bed with both hands down on the mattress. Then I felt pressure as if their left hand moved forward and pressed down. Then, what felt like their right hand moved forward and closer to my knee. Then their left hand moved forward. It felt like someone or something was crawling up to my face, slowly and methodically. It was a Harley Quinn-type movement. I could feel the palm push down first, then the hand rolled forward to the fingers. Imagine it like how a person walks, heel to toe. The motion is very similar and very exaggerated. It was creepy and unsettling, like it was having fun. I flung off the blankets and jumped into my daughter's bed, hoping her innocence would save me. I was facing the wall spooning her, and I saw shadows go across the wall. I jumped up and turned the light on, frantically grabbing our stuff to pack up to leave. I went down to check out. It was about 4 a.m. The guy working said, "You are leaving early." I said, "Yeah, couldn't sleep, by chance." "Do you have anyone ever tell you this hotel is haunted?" I laughed nervously, waiting for him to laugh too, which I wish he would have. Instead, he replied, "Why? What room were you in?" I told him, and he replied, "I don't know why they put you over there. I never put people over there. Ever since we got new owners, they did a cleansing on the building, thinking things would get better, but since then, things have gotten worse." I told him, "Yeah, I don't think it worked." I will never forget that, and I wanted to share it. Japanese hotel hidden camera. I arrived in Tokyo after a long flight, exhausted and in need of a place to rest my head. As I wandered through the busy streets, I stumbled upon a capsule hotel. If you haven't heard about them before, they're a type of budget accommodation popular in Japan where you sleep in a tight, coffin-like pod. It's obviously not the most comfortable way to sleep, but I was intrigued by the concept and so decided to give it a try. As I walked through the doors of the hotel, the smell of cleaning products and the sound of muffled chatter filled the air. The receptionist, dressed in a traditional Japanese kimono, greeted me with a polite bow and led me to my pod. The pod was small and compact, with just enough space for me to lie down and sleep. The walls were made of plastic and the roof was a soft cushion that was pretty much molded to my body. But the bedding was surprisingly comfortable and the blanket was thick and warm. Nevertheless, despite my exhaustion, I couldn't ignore that feeling of being trapped. The pod genuinely felt like a coffin, suffocating and claustrophobic. I tried to calm myself down and get some rest, but I knew it was going to be difficult. But what made things even worse was that as the night went on, I started to hear strange noises coming from outside my pod. It sounded like footsteps and whispering, but when I opened the curtain to look outside, there was no one there. I just laid back down in my pod, and after an hour or so, my exhaustion eventually took over and I drifted off to sleep. It wasn't until the next night, however, as I climbed into my bed, I noticed a red light next to the curtain. At first, I thought it was some sort of decoration, but as the night went on, the light persisted. I started to feel uneasy and paranoid, so I reported the red light to the hotel staff. They assured me that it must have been a mistake and that they would take care of it. But when I crawled back into my pod that night, the red light was still there. I observed it closer and compared the light to the camera on my phone, and it was almost an identical match. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that someone had put a camera in my pod. I knew I needed to do something, but I was too scared to move. The thought of confronting whoever was watching me was terrifying, and I didn't know what they were capable of. But then as I stared down the camera, suddenly the red light went off. I waited for it to turn back on, but it never did. I just lay there in silence, wondering who was watching me and what they were doing with the footage. The next day, I checked out of the hotel and went straight to the police. They took my statement and promised to investigate, but I never heard anything back. To this day, the thought of someone recording me while I sleep still plays on my mind, and I warn everyone I know to never stay in a capsule hotel, as you never know who might be watching. Unexpected hotel guest. So, I, 22M, stayed a night in a hotel in Ohio before catching a flight early the next morning. Everything went well at first. Check-in was smooth, the room was nice. I ordered some pizza, and shortly after eating, I fell asleep around 10 p.m. I slept pretty well until about 2 a.m. I was woken up to the sound of what I think was people talking. I couldn't make out words, but it sounded like voices. Half awake, I rubbed my eyes and looked around as the sound appeared to be getting closer. I began to be able to make out that it was a conversation, but in a language I didn't understand. It almost sounded like the Latin we sang in the high school choir. I don't know why it scared me so much, but as they got closer to my room I froze. The only sounds in the room were now the AC unit and my breathing. They stopped at my door. I could hear them shuffling around, talking in a hushed tone. Shit. I tried so hard not to even move, breathing as quietly as possible. I didn't want to be dramatic and hide in the bathroom, but I also didn't want to dismiss it because of the what-ifs. After what felt like an eternity of trying not to move and hearing them talk, the door handle started to go wild, like they were trying to jerk off the handles. The noise of the door rapidly hitting the frame and the handle being jerked in every direction filled the room in such a way that it almost felt like I couldn't hear myself think. "This room is occupied. Please go away." I tried to sound like the big burly man I tend to be, but there was a shake in my voice. I knew I was too far from home to call for help. This was between me and whoever was on the other side of the door. They started screaming at me through the door in the same language they were speaking in previously. While I didn't understand it, it sounded threatening. I tried again. "If you don't leave me alone, I'll call the police." Complete silence. At this point, the silence felt deafening. I tried to listen to see if they were still there, keeping my eyes on the door for any more movement I may not be able to hear. Moments later, the door, still locked, slowly crept open. At this point, I was more angry than I was scared. I got out of bed, cursing to myself as I went to see who was messing with me. Nothing. I walked the halls for a moment, looking to see in every hiding spot, but there was no one. I went back into my room and did not sleep a wink the rest of the night, scared that whoever or whatever was at my door might return. Haunted hotel room. Before I started this story, I heard this story from one of my high school teachers 5 years ago, and it gave me chills, so I thought I could share this story. Telling this in first-person view, I was on a business trip in Washington State for a couple of days coming from Utah. Once the trip was over, I was driving back home, but I didn't bother getting any rest before driving. I'd been driving for almost 4 hours and in the middle of nowhere, but all I cared about was finding a hotel so I could get some sleep. After 30 minutes at around midnight, I found a hotel, so I pulled up, got a room, and took a shower so I could go to sleep. When I was brushing my teeth, I heard a couple arguing from the room next to mine. I wanted to check if everything was okay, but at the same, it wasn't any of my business, so I just ignored it. After falling asleep, I woke up at like 4 a.m. and from the same room next to me, I heard a woman crying. After having second thoughts of wanting to see what's happening, I decided to go to the room and knock on the door to see if everything was okay. I had second thoughts again and I decided not to knock, but I did see a keyhole. I looked through it and I saw a woman, but her back was facing the door. I decided to leave her alone, went back to my room, and went back to sleep. I woke up again at 6 a.m., got ready, packed my bags, and left the room so I could get back on the road. Right before I started to make my way to the front desk, I wanted to check one more time through the keyhole where the woman was staying at. When I looked at the keyhole, all I saw was a red light. I had no reaction and just left it alone. Once I returned the key to the lady at the front desk, I asked her, "Excuse me, do you know anything about the room next to mine? I kept hearing noises throughout the night, and I'm just wondering if you know anything." What she said to me freaked me out. She looks at me and says, "Oh yeah, that room. Supposedly that room is haunted, and that's where the woman with the red eyes lives."